It's very, very difficult when you're sex addicted to face the truth of your addiction and surrender it and let it go. Sex addiction is an addiction that lives in the brain, it lives in the mind. The drug associated with sex addiction is dopamine. Your brain produces dopamine during your compulsive sexual behavior. So, in essence, your brain becomes a drug manufacturing machine. Hey guys, I'm behavioral health and sex addiction recovery coach, and I'm thrilled that you're here today. If you have been courageously battling sex addiction for a long time and you feel that there's no way out, you're feeling hopeless, you are talking down to yourself, you hate yourself, you are living in secrecy, you're feeling shameful and guilty, you isolate, and you are experiencing a low ebb in life where you are depressed regularly and you feel no motivation to move forward other than if it involves pornography or some form of compulsive sexual behavior. And perhaps you also are addicted to methamphetamine or alcohol or cocaine or other drugs, hoppers, for example, amyl nitrate, that enhance the sexual experiences that you have. If you are wrapped up in the bundle of these addictions, with sex addiction being a core addiction, you're in the right spot. This YouTube channel focuses on men who are sex addicted, who feel hopeless, who feel as though there's no way out from their addiction, and they are seeking a way to change and transform their lives. It's very, very difficult when you're sex addicted to face the truth of your addiction and surrender it and let it go. Sex addiction is an addiction that lives in the brain, it lives in the mind. The drug associated with sex addiction is dopamine. Your brain produces dopamine during your compulsive sexual behavior. So, in essence, your brain becomes a drug manufacturing machine. So, for the cocaine addict, once they receive a bag of cocaine, if you're addicted to cocaine, you're liable to take the cocaine. For sex addicts, the cocaine is in the brain, the drug's in the brain. You can get high, you can get a fix just off brain chemicals just by fantasizing, seeing someone on the side of the road that stimulates you or triggers you, and you can start getting higher on your own brain chemicals living in fantasy. Then you're going to go home and go right to the computer to watch pornography to live out that fantasy you created all day from someone you saw on the side of the road. This is typical for sex addicts. Sex addicts are not addicted to sex. Sex addicts are addicted to certain sexual behaviors. So it is a behavioral addiction, and the World Health Organization does say that it is a mental health disorder as well. Sex addiction alters the brain. It messes with the dopamine system in the midbrain, and it messes with the prefrontal cortex where you experience impulse control. So you damage the prefrontal cortex and you damage your dopamine system when you're actively involved in your sex addiction. And all of this can be repaired in time. Your brain can rewire, but it takes time for your brain to do that. And there are strategies that you need to utilize to transform your life from a sex addicted life to a life of healthy sexual expression. In fact, I have a great video, a 10-step strategy session I'm going to offer you at the end of this video for you to spend 30 minutes in a mini classroom with me for 10 steps or 10 strategies that will begin to pave the way for you to transform your life from a sex addicted life to a life where you can manage your sexual behavior and free yourself from the guilt, the shame, and isolation of it. But for today, I want to talk with you about your options if you are sex addicted. And there are options. And I want to keep this really, really simple. I don't want to make this complicated. The first and foremost, if you are a sex addict, the first option is going into and staying in denial. So if you are sex addicted, you can stay in denial. Denial basically means that everyone sees the elephant in the room but you. You just don't see the fact that you are sex addicted. If you're here watching this video, odds are you have stepped out of denial and you're starting to notice that you may be sex addicted or that you are compulsively involved in sexual behavior that you seem unable to control or stop. Denial is a place in life where you will continue going down the rabbit hole of horror and conflict and self-deprecation and losing relationships and marriages, losing careers, losing your financial stability, losing your reputation that may at one time been healthy and strong, and it becomes horrible after a while. And denial is not a safe place to be. Ignorance is not bliss when it comes to sex addiction. You want to be aware of your sex addiction and you want to be able to do something about it. So you do not want to be in denial. If you're in denial, you're not ready to make any changes. You're just going to progress in your addiction, become miserable, and then at some point, you'll be ready to take a look at it. Now, when you realize that you are sex addicted, you do have an option. You can simply live with it. You can accept the fact you're sex addicted. You don't have to stop. Continue in your sex addiction. Life will get worse and worse for you, but you can live with it. You don't have to do anything about it if you don't want to. But I'll tell you something that's very selfish about sex addiction. You're hurting other people. I have news for you. When you are having anonymous sex, for example, or you're going on dates and using someone else for your sexual pleasure, well, they also may be suffering with poor self-image or their own addiction to sexual behavior. So you're actually joining them and forcing their own sex addiction and their own objectification and their own need to feel validated and loved like you feel a need to be validated and loved. Somewhere along the lines, you have developed the belief that to be needed, wanted, loved, nurtured, and cared for, sex will offer you that, but it's an illusion. It's a lie. It's not true. It's an illusion that you've come to believe. If anything, a lot of times after sexual behavior, you feel more lonely and you self-deprecate. You talk down to yourself. You hate yourself. So that goes to show that no, it's not giving you what you think you need or thought you needed. It's an illusion. And you're also giving that to someone else who's also suffering like you. So many people, if you go on Grindr or Tinder, or you're looking for someone online and you feel a need to meet someone to be validated and realize how wanted you are and how attractive you are and how many people are really wanting to be with you, they're also seeking the same thing. It's basically a dead end. Generally, it's a dead end. You can be healthy and go on these sites and meet someone and go on a date and have something that flourishes, or you can have casual sex and it's not an addiction. It can be healthy. But I'm talking to you if you're sex addicted or relationship addicted and addicted to other chemicals in your sex addiction. That's who I'm speaking with today, not those that are experiencing this stuff in a healthy environment. So we can just simply live with it and do nothing about it, but you're still going to keep going down the rabbit hole of pain and agony and misery. So that is one option. The other option, this is what a lot of people do, they negotiate with their sex addiction. You're not quite ready to let it go because it feels so good and it defines you. This is who you are. You're a sex addicted man. This is who you are. You define yourself by it. So you'll negotiate. I'll just go to the bathhouse on Saturday. I'll only go to the sex club on Tuesday night. I'll only go on Grindr on Fridays after work. So you negotiate with your addiction. And this always fails. If you're an addict, this always fails. You will always fail negotiating with your sex addiction. But that is what a lot of sex addicts do. We go from denial to living with it to negotiating with it because we come to realize we can't live with this. It's tearing my life apart. It's ruining my relationships. I'm in possibility of losing my job. So no, I cannot live with this, but I'll negotiate with it for a while. And after you negotiate it for the while, life gets really horrible and keeps getting worse and worse. And then you get to the point where you are willing to surrender. Yes, you're willing to surrender, wave your white flag, realize that you cannot any longer negotiate or live with your sex addiction. And certainly you're not in denial anymore. You're actually taking a direct look at your sexually compulsive behaviors. And now you start to do something about it. When you surrender, you are willing to do whatever it takes to change and transform your life. But I will tell you, a lot of people will go back and forth here in this cycle. They'll go back to negotiating with it. They'll go back to just living with it. And believe it or not, a lot of times people go right back to denial. Yes, they go back to denial, and that's called relapse. They go back into denial, and their entire life gets consumed once again with sex addiction. And when that happens, you now have to go back at some point, you have to go back to surrender. Let's take a look at denial. What happens in denial? Denial is simply a slow progression at first, but it becomes more rapid later. Yes, sex addiction slowly progresses at first and then rapidly later on, years down the road. You will become increasingly unhappy. You will be increasingly feeling inferior, less than, as though you don't fit in. And you will increasingly self deprecate and talk down to yourself. You'll have serious feelings of loneliness, and that loneliness will not subside by hooking up with other men, going on Grindr or Tinder or Bumble, or looking for people to date, magically save you from your loneliness. It's not going to work. You're going to continue getting more and more lonely. Now, if you decide to live with it, your feelings of self-hatred, your feelings of self-loathing will continue to increase. You will continue to self-deprecate. And you will believe this is who you are and who you always will be. And isolation, right here, you isolate more in life. So isolation kicks in. This is who you are, always will be who you are. You'll wear masks. You'll start lying. You won't meet with friends and family. Many times you'll cancel plans because you're acting out in your compulsive sexual behavior. You will live with shame and secrets, and you'll wear masks. You want to hide the real you because you don't want anyone to see who you really are. So you become the master of masks, hiding behind the Halloween mask 365 days a year. Or you can negotiate with it. Negotiation never works. Could work short term, but it will never work long term. Hopelessness becomes increasingly intense. Yes, you will become more and more hopeless. This is when suicidal ideation kicks in. You'll begin to lose jobs, relationships, your reputation will become shot. You will, however, during the negotiation period, seek out 12-step meetings, therapy, maybe counseling, and you will make false promises with failed attempts, and depression sinks in. You will become more and more depressed. And the depression has a lot to do with messing up the dopamine system in the brain. I have other videos on that. I'll have a link below that will take you to a video that talks about the dopamine in the brain and how the dopamine system's working. So you become more and more depressed. The longer you live with sex addiction, the more depressed you will be with or without your addiction. And you can rewire the brain and ultimately heal, but it will take time. And the longer you're in your sex addiction, the longer it will take for your brain to rewire and heal. Now, you can also surrender. You can surrender to your addiction. This gives you hope. Yes, hope may be the only spiritual principle you have in the beginning that will lead to faith and ultimately success in transforming your life from a sex addicted life to one with healthy sexual expression. You'll have the courage to forge ahead. Yes, into the unknown. I call it the unknown heaven. You live in the known hell when you're in active sex addiction. Now you're going into the unknown heaven, and you'll eventually experience healthy sexual expression. That is the ultimate goal, to experience healthy sexual expression free from guilt, shame, isolation, and self-deprecation. That's very, very important. Now, you can also, from here, you can go into denial again, as I mentioned before, which would be a relapse. How does this happen? Well, now you've surrendered, you feel good about yourself, you're experiencing healthier sexual expression, but euphoric recall kicks in. You start getting euphoric, feeling euphoria when you're recalling your sex addicted behaviors, those compulsive behaviors. You romanticize those behaviors. You look back on them and you miss them and you sit with that. And you have consequence amnesia. You forget the consequences. You just remember how good it felt. You begin to isolate and you separate from your support network. Whether it's a village of people that you are holding you accountable, or a 12-step meeting, or your therapist, coach, counselor, whatever it is that you have part of your healing in life, you begin to separate now, and you go right back to that denial. in relapse. You can go back to surrendering right away if you don't minimize. See, now you do not minimize setbacks, slips, and relapses. If you get into a relapse, a setback, or a slip, realize it for what it is and get right back into surrender. Be alert of old patterns that might resurface, those old patterns of behavior. You remember them well. You remember those behaviors. And if they start resurfacing, you are to take a look at that so you can get right back into surrender and be honest with somebody. Be honest with another individual. Tell someone honestly what's going on with your experience in your relapse or in your slip or in your setback. Relapses, slips, and setbacks are exceedingly common in sex addiction recovery. Drugs, alcohol, you eliminate the chemical or the substance. Sex, it's in the brain. It's insidious. It's in your thoughts. It's in the wiring of your brain. So it's very, very easy to slip and slide and have setbacks or relapses in your sex addiction. But pay attention. Don't minimize them. Be alert when old behaviors pop up and be honest. Always bring it to the light. That is first and foremost when you are in a setback, a slip, or a relapse. Don't live in the darkness. My coach always tells me, when you turn the light on, darkness disappears. So I hope some of this gave you some insight into your options if you are sex addicted and what you will experience as you go through the cycle, from denial to living with it and accepting it for what it is, which won't work for you, and then negotiating with it, which is a process that many sex addicts go through and realize negotiating doesn't work, and then you surrender. Then you let it go. And you have hope and faith that things will get better when you realize that my sex addicted life is not working. I need a new design. And you take someone else's experience, strength, and hope, and you take their suggestions, and you lead a new life with a new design. And I promise you, if a life free from addiction wasn't good, I personally wouldn't be here having a life free from sex addiction. Doesn't mean I might not have setbacks or slips or old behaviors that may crop up, but because I live a healthy life today, focused on my spiritual development, when I do have a thought or a setback or a slip, I'm able to get right back where I need to be in that surrender stage and staying close and connected to my higher power, nature. And I have another video on that, on connecting to a higher power, a higher source, something outside of the brain. Because I have news for you. The thinking, the mindset that brought you to a place of addiction is not the same mindset that can fix it. You can't fix it with the same mindset that brought the problem in your life. So you need to get out of your head. That's why we talk about connection to nature or something outside of you to help you get out of your head, get out of that stinking thinking, and start transforming your life. I have more information on that and many other strategies that you can use in a free 10-step strategy session I'm offering you now. I'll have the link below. 10-step strategies, 10 steps, 10 strategies to transform your life from one that is sex addicted to a life where you will begin to experience spiritual development and a life of healthy sexual expression. So please feel free to click the link below. Watch that 30-minute session. Take a notepad and a pen. It will help you, I promise. And I hope to see that you went and watched that video. And if you want to, after the video, set up a 45-minute free strategy call with me. Everyone's welcome. So set up that strategy call once you watch the 30-minute 10-step strategy session. And let's talk a little bit about your sex addiction, your pattern, and let me give you some help, some guidance, some suggestions that will begin to heal and repair your life. I am grateful you were here today. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel. Hit the thumbs up if you like this video, and feel free to leave me any comments if you have some comments that I would love to hear from you and respond to. So if you have any comments, please lay them below. You have a great day. I post a video every Tuesday. I'll see you next Tuesday.